So, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome from the Central European University Business School. We are starting the webinar, Decision Support and Value of Information. As I understand, we have a very nice and large audience, so thank you very much for the interest. And I hope that you will find this webinar interesting and useful in your work and in your daily practice. As you can see, and the first few minutes I will spend actually with a bit of an overview of the topic and just clarifying what I'm going to talk about, specifically decision trees. But we will actually solve a particular decision tree. Generally, as those of you know me, I prefer practical classes which are really introducing a certain level of theory, but also showing a practical example, showing an example, a particular case when the theory we cover can be used. And therefore, we are actually going to solve a relatively simple exercise with decision trees. Therefore, I would recommend that you either have printed or on screen the page that we have sent you, which contains EVA manufacturing situation and problem-solving exercise. Right? So it might be a good idea to open the document while I'm introducing the subject. So without further ado, once again, welcome all of you, and let's start. As many of you know, I'm not really in favor of PowerPoint death, so consequently there are altogether 12 slides. So don't be afraid of the actual number of slides I'm going to show. After the session, we will also send you the PowerPoint and the Excel file that I'm going to use during the webinar. So as you can see, let's start with the specific topic, decision support. I mean, here is a very simple and very straightforward looking guy. He is having a nice map. Obviously, it should be replaced with a GPS and a smartwatch by now, but that wouldn't really give a nice picture, so I kept the old approach of the map. So this guy is trying to make a decision on which direction he should start, and he is looking at the map and trying to figure out various pathways which would take him to the right location. Maybe it's a pub, maybe it's another type of location. So what I'm going to talk about specifically is how to solve or how to support decision. And I'm going to show you a particular tool called decision trees. So I'm going to talk about decision trees. And in relationship to decision trees, I will also discuss value of information. Now, whenever I bring up these two particular topics or these two particular items, decision trees and value of information, there are two comments which generally immediately appear as feedback from the audience. I would also note, because since I mentioned the word feedback, I should note that the idea is generally that if you have any questions, we will have a 15-minute Q&A session at the end. So you are welcome to ask any questions at the end. Nevertheless, my colleague, Andrea Szilágyi, is looking at your feedback and your comments as I progress with the presentation. And if you feel, particularly because this is a somewhat quantitative field, quantitative approach, if you feel that there is a particular step, there is a particular item that is unclear and you would need some further information or some further detail, clarification, just write it down into your message box that you need some further information in this or that. And if it's a specific question, then Andrea will notify me that there is a level of, there is a need for clarification. Okay? So nevertheless, let me progress once again, that when I introduce decision trees and value of information, then generally I get two immediate feedbacks from the audience. Number one, that some people have seen or in some cases tried out even a decision tree. And what people remember generally, that this is some kind of technical mumbo-jumbo. This is something to do with numbers, and it's only for people with quantitative background. But hopefully, by the end of this presentation, it will be clear that actually it's not a technical mumbo-jumbo. It's something that is really useful, and it's not just for people with quantitative approaches and technical approaches. This is something that can be used at all management levels for management support. It is very useful as a tool to describe alternatives, decision pathways, and it can be supported, certainly, with numbers, and we are going to look at numbers as well. This is the first item that usually comes up. So it's not just for technically minded quantitative people. And the second question is that what do I mean by value of information? Let's suppose that you would like to introduce a new product on a particular market, and you have already gathered lots of information, and the information pieces include, let's say, predictions about demand on the market, marketing study, maybe they involve predictions from your sales department, predictions from your accounting, specific cost estimates, and so on. You already have a large set of information, and you are trying to make the decision how to enter the market based on all that information, or the information package, based on the available information package. Now, you are being offered an additional marketing study. Obviously, there is a cost of the additional marketing study, and this is the cost the external firm offers this study to you. But I'm not interested in the cost. We are not going to calculate the actual cost of summarizing or extracting information or extracting something from an enterprise resource planning package like SAP and then listing that information. No, what I'm going to look at that for you as a decision maker, this additional piece of information, what is the value of it? Is it going to make your decision making better? And how much better is it going to make? And what is the value that you will gain if you are using that additional piece of information? It may well be that although the cost of the information package is several tens of thousands of dollars, but actually the value of the information package for you is zero because it's not going to make your decision making better. Okay? So once again, value of information, not cost of the information. So decision trees. I will show you an example in a second. Overall, what I would say that decision trees help you in collecting, structuring, presenting information, alternative decision pathways. They also help you find alternatives, as we will discuss, and help you look at these alternatives objectively. And finally, as we will see, decision trees also help in providing estimates about value of additional information. So if you like, from the educational point of view, these are the three specific targets, the learning objectives of our short webinar. And your guide, for those who don't know me, and your guide for this particular session will be my humble self. So I'm a senior lecturer at the Central European University. My name is Tibor Vörös. You can find my email there. So if you have further questions, feel free to write on the email. I have a background in information technology mostly, but in recent years I was more involved in business simulations. So most of those attending the seminar and having been to the business school, probably we've met on simulation classes. So without further ado now, I will actually jump into decision trees. So let's introduce what decision trees are. So decision trees, as you can see down there, effectively they are like a tree-like structure, a tree-like graph. And the idea is that they would help you to actually write down the various decision pathways. As you can see, we have a node. We call these centers nodes. The first node is a square node. This is a decision. For example, right now in Budapest, the weather is not exactly absolutely perfect in comparison to the fact that it's end of April, it's raining and it's rather cold. So if I would like to go out and do a walk, then I have a variety of different possibilities to reach my, let's say, my target location. I can walk all the way, I can walk part the way and then take public transport, or I can take public transport the whole way, or I can call a cab using Uber to refer back to social phenomena there. So there are a number of different approaches that we can use. Because it's a decision I'm making, therefore it's a decision node, chance node. You can see those circles. The circles are probabilities. So, for example, although I do have a control over which particular way I would approach my destination, I do not have control about the weather or on the weather. So consequently, the chance node represents an event that may or may not happen, or rather it happens with a certain probability. Right now, I think for tonight there was an 80% probability of rain or something like this. So that's pretty high. That's pretty high. As you can see, also, although it's not noted separately because those are optional items, at the end of those lines we have event 1, event 2, event 3. So this is where this entire decision sort of ends with a particular event, with a particular conclusion, and this conclusion can be represented with triangles. So these are the type of, this is a decision tree. It can be drawn vertically, horizontally, up to you. In a complex decision tree, you would have thousands and thousands of nodes. You would have several decision nodes, several chance nodes. For example, if we are talking about let's say transportation, then you may have option nodes related, chance nodes related to the price of petrol. I mean, just a few weeks ago, or in the last one of the last weekends, it was a major item that how would the summit end in terms of agreeing on limiting production or not agreeing. There was no agreement reached. So the chances of the price rising or the chances of the oil price further decreasing was certainly affected by this recent event. So once again, chance nodes, not only natural events, but it can be any type of event that is outside of your control. We will draw this very simple decision tree based on our example. So I will show you how it exactly works using the EVA manufacturing case study. This case is based on Kirkwood's decision tree premier book. This book is an open source, and that's why I selected this. This is the example itself is a much adapted. It's a changed version of the original exercise. But if you want to get more information, if you want to see more about decision trees after this presentation, the links which you can find at the bottom of the page we have sent will take you to a web book that you can read and develop and review further. So once again, without further ado, I will now jump into our specific case study, which is about EVA manufacturing. So EVA manufacturing, and once again, it's a good idea to bring up now the page on screen. So EVA manufacturing actually has a unique opportunity because it has managed to get a contract, or it was contracted by Boston Dynamics. If you don't know Boston Dynamics is very famous for its robots. You might have seen those bipedal and running robots it has built for the US government and for defense purposes and army-related purposes. Recently, it has been bought by Google, but actually Google is selling the company now. Nevertheless, manufacturing something for Boston Dynamics for a small company like EVA Manufacturing is a great opportunity. So, as members of EVA Manufacturing, we are absolutely glad. However, we have a small issue here because we have to manufacture, or we are manufacturing printed circuit boards, and these, the way how the contract goes, Boston Dynamics requires immediately 100,000 boards, but Boston Dynamics has an option to take delivery of an additional 100,000 boards in 3 months by giving EVA 30 days notice. So consequently, we are having a bit of an issue, which is a manufacturing question. If you read the text, it tells you that EVA manufactures the PC boards using a batch process, and manufacturing costs are as follows. There is a fixed setup cost of $250,000 for any manufacturing batch run, and there is a marginal manufacturing cost of $2 per board. So this means that the setup, so setting up the necessary logic in our automated manufacturing plant to build these printed circuit boards, the cost of this, the initial cost of this, the fixed setup cost is pretty high. That's $250,000. So the question is, if right now Boston Dynamics wants 100,000 pieces, and later on it may or may not require an additional 100,000, should we manufacture right now 100,000 or 200,000? This is a very simple and very straightforward question, but we need a clear answer for that. We have to somehow explain our decision. One way to try to explain our decision is once again to basically lay out all the possible alternatives and trying to compare them. As you can see, I already put up there at the beginning of the decision tree. There is the sort of square on the left-hand side of the screen. This is the manufacturing decision, and obviously the easiest decision, as you can see in black bold letters written, all 200. So let's manufacture all 200 of 200,000 of the boards at the very beginning, and let's see later on what happens. That's one option. In this particular slide, to make things easier to read and easier on the eye, all the data, all the figures are in thousands, right? So the 200 refers to 200,000, and all the financial values are in dollars. Okay? So if we manufacture immediately all 200,000 items, what is it that it costs us? How much is the cost? How much is the immediate revenue? The cost is fairly simple to calculate. We have 200,000 boards. We have $2 marginal cost. That means 400,000 plus the fixed setup cost of 250,000, which ends with 650,650 on the slide. The revenue, because actually Boston Dynamics only buys the first 100,000, and each board Boston Dynamics will pay $5 for each board, so consequently $500,000, 500, the number that is displayed on the screen. Okay, so the decision tree is a sequence of events. So first we have to make the decision. We have made the decision on this alternative that we are manufacturing all 200,000 boards. Then what happens? Then we are waiting. What are we waiting for? We are waiting for the call from Boston Dynamics. Do they want the additional 100,000 or not? This is not something we control. This is outside of our control. This is a chance node. So the chance node, what about the second batch? Will we get the order or not? Two options. Yes, we will get the order. Or no, we will not get the order. As you can see in the text, it says that EVA believes there is a 50% chance that Boston Dynamics will exercise its option to buy the additional 100,000 boards. That's why I put it there, yes, 0.5, 50% probability. That's a fairly straightforward, like 50% probability. Quite simply, it's a flip a coin. So yes or no? I don't know. I don't have any specific, I don't have better information on this. Okay? In that case, if EVA actually requires us to manufacture the second batch, the second 100,000 batch. This means that because we already manufactured it together with the first batch, so consequently there are no additional manufacturing items and there is no additional cost. In the second run, the only thing that we are getting is the revenue, which is an additional 500,000. So this is our result at the end of this option, at the end of this alternative. What happens if Boston Dynamics is not asking for a second manufacturing set? Well, in that case, we are not going to manufacture any. It's not going to cost us any, but we are not going to get any revenue either. So this was, once again, the easiest alternative, if you like. Let's have all 200,000 manufactured immediately. Another alternative. What about manufacturing only 100,000 and waiting for the call from Boston Dynamics? In that case, we are manufacturing, as you can see on the screen, number of printed circuits we need, actually PCBs, never mind. So the number of printed circuits we are manufacturing, 100,000, 100. The cost is 250,000 plus 200,000 marginal, altogether 450,000, so 450 there, and the revenue is 500. This decision pathway is 100 and wait, 100,000 and wait. Again, we have the same second batch yes or no option, and if we go through this, this means that because we have not manufactured and we only manufactured the first 100,000, so we have to manufacture the second batch now. So that's why on the yes branch, in this case, we have 100, 450 and 500 as the second manufacturing run, number of printed circuits, the cost value and the revenue value. Okay? If we are not manufacturing, so if they are not asking for more, they are not asking, Boston Dynamics is not asking for the second batch, then we don't manufacture, we have no cost, no revenue. And this is why I'm saying that this is not just a quantitative tool. At this point, for example, you would conclude as the head of the company, maybe, that these are your only options. But if you have a meeting with your colleagues and with your members, then maybe somebody will say, well, you know, we have one other possibility. Maybe we can do some research and development while we are manufacturing the first run, and this will decrease our cost for the second run manufacturing. Okay? This is a great opportunity, so let's explore that one as well. In the text, it says that if we are doing R&D, right? So if we are doing R&D while we are manufacturing the first 100,000, we will look at the programming, we will look at how we set up the machinery, and this means that when we are doing the second run, we can considerably decrease the setup cost. But the R&D requires that while we are doing the first run, we are doing some extra work. We are recording how the setup is going and we are optimizing the setup. There is a cost to it. The text says that the R&D will cost 25,000. That's why if you look at the third branch now, the 100 and R&D approach, in this case, we are manufacturing 100,000, but the cost is not only 450,000, but 450,000 plus the 25,000. The total, 475,000. So the cost in this case, 475,000. The revenue is 500,000 as before. However, again, we have to think, and this is very important, that when you are doing a decision tree, you are thinking like in a video film, right? So although you can jump, once you have the recorded session, you can jump back and forth and rewind and go back. But if you are looking at it real time, then it follows a time sequence. So similarly, in this case, the time sequence is that we finish the manufacturing of the first 100,000, we finish the R&D, and then we have to decide whether the R&D was successful or not. Our department tells us that actually the R&D is not always successful. So sometimes we quite simply, despite the fact that we recorded everything on during the manufacturing process, we cannot optimize upon it. So, this means that there is something that is not under our control. We may get lucky and we can actually do this optimization, or we may be unlucky and quite simply the exercise that we are doing in terms of setting up the machinery for the run is so complex that we cannot optimize it. In the text, and our department tells this, that the probability is such that, let's say, if we do 10 R&D, that only 4 occasions, on 4 occasions we would be successful. In 6 cases we would not be able to decrease the cost of a subsequent setup of our machinery. This is why we have a success question. And if at the end of the manufacturing the first 100,000, our department concludes that we can optimize the setup, then that means that we are successful in the R&D. The probability of this is 40%. Now, once we have concluded this, then again, like in the previous cases, we are waiting for the call from Boston Dynamics that do you want the second batch manufactured or not? So similarly to the previous cases, we have the second batch manufacturing question, and we have either yes, so they are calling us, and we are ever so happy because we are getting the order for the second set of printed circuits. In this case, similarly to the previous cases, we have 100,000 to manufacture, but because the R&D was successful, as the text says, the cost of the fixed setup per batch will be reduced by 200,000 to only 50,000. So this means manufacturing 100,000, the marginal cost 200,000, the total cost of manufacturing those 100,000 is 200,000 plus, instead of adding 250,000, we only have to add 50,000. So the conclusion is that the cost in this case, because of the R&D, has been reduced to 250,000. 250 as displayed on the screen. The revenue is not changing, not mattering whether we do the R&D or not. Boston Dynamics will still pay the $5 for each unit, so the revenue is 500,000, 500 on screen. If they don't ask for the second batch, then, well, we've done the R&D unnecessarily. It's not going to help us in anything. They are not asking for the second one. But our success chance note has a second part to it, and this second part is the 60% not successful R&D. This means that despite the fact that we actually followed and carefully evaluated the way how the setup was going, we could not find any opportunity for optimizing it. It's not possible. We have to, if we have a second batch, we will have to do the complete reset of the machinery again. Similarly, in this case, we have the question, second batch, and if it's yes, so Boston Dynamics requires the second batch, then we are going back to the basic situation of manufacturing 100,000, costing $450,000, and revenue as usual or as before $500,000. There is no decrease in the cost as a consequence of the R&D because the R&D was not successful. And the alternative pathway, no, Boston Dynamics is not ordering, so in that case 0 manufactured printed circuits, 0 cost and 0 revenue. This is our decision tree. This is the decision tree that we can lay out, we can actually present, that this summarizes 3 different pathways. Which one to select, which one to go for. In order to do that, we should summarize the profit for every single pathway. So let me go through. In the first case, we have throughout the pathway, okay, the total cost is 650,000. That's when we are manufacturing all 200 at the beginning. At the top of the screen, I'm starting from the top down, one by one. And the revenue that we are getting is 2 times 500,000. So our total profit is $350,000, 350 on the screen. We are a bit sort of unlucky, because if we have manufactured all 200,000 to begin with, and we are not getting the second order, then quite simply, sorry, we are in a loss. Okay? In fact, this is 150,000 of loss. Once again, if I will just go through these rows, these decision pathways, you can check these calculations later. If we are doing the 100,000 manufacturing and waiting for the order, in that case we have a lower profit because we had to do the setup, the initial setup cost twice, so our profit is only 100,000, and we have a profit of 50,000 if Boston Dynamics is not asking for the second batch. If we do the R&D, in that case, if the R&D is successful and Boston Dynamics is asking for the second batch, we have a profit of 275. If it's not asking for the second batch, then the profit is only 25, because the initial profit of 50 is reduced by the R&D cost. And finally, we are slightly worse off if we have done the R&D and it wasn't successful. So we will end with a profit of 75 and with a profit of 25 if Boston Dynamics is not asking for the second batch. So these are the numbers, these are our profits on the different pathways. Now, what is the probability of each of them happening? That's a very important question for us, because that helps us to give a value to our decision. The first situation with again I'm going from top to bottom. The first situation, if we are manufacturing 200,000 to begin with, is fairly straightforward. 50% chance, so flip the coin, 50% chance of getting the second batch, and 50% chance of not getting the second batch. Same for the 100,000. It's a bit more complex for the R&D situation, because in that case we have two chance nodes connected to each other, so the probability of being success with R&D is 40% and 0.4, and the probability of Boston Dynamics asking for the second batch is 50%. So 0.5 and 0.4, these are two independent events, so the probability of them happening, both of them, you can get the probability by multiplying these numbers. So multiplying 0.4 and 0.5, you end with 20%. Similarly, I will multiply the probabilities for the other branches. So for 25, again, 0.4 times 0.5, that adds 20%. If we are not successful with the R&D, 0.6, lower branch, times 0.5, 30%, and the lowest branch, 0.6 times 0.5, again 30%. So these are the probabilities. And this is where we come to the value that is very commonly referred to, and it's sort of easy to misunderstand, the expected value. What is the expected value on our first decision route of manufacturing all 200,000? We get the expected value by multiplying the corresponding probabilities and the values. So this means that you can see at the top that the first branch for the all 200,000 manufacturing, at the end we have four values altogether, two sets, 350 profit, 50% probability, minus 150, 50% probability. In order to get the expected value, you have to multiply the corresponding values and add them together. 350 times 50% plus minus 50 times 50%. Okay? This is the expected value. This expected value, if you add these numbers together, is 100. Does it mean that you are going to get 100,000 if you are going on this route? No. It means that if you were to do this decision, if you were to repeat this situation, let's say 100 times, 50 times, you would get a profit of 350,000, and 50 times, you would get a loss of 150,000. Because the probability of the second batch order happening is 50%. The average, the arithmetic mean of these 100 situations can be summarized as 100. So the expected value is an average value that describes you what would happen on the long run if you were to do this several times. But you will never actually get the 100,000. In fact, if you select this route, 50% of the time, you will end up with a loss of $150,000. I hope this is clear, or this is understandable somewhat. At least Andrea is telling me that so far there were no major comments from the participants that I should repeat. So I will progress. I will go forward. I will do the calculation. Once again, I will send you the Excel file so you can review this in detail, but I will just go forward and show you the values, all the expected values. Once again, what I'm doing in each situation, I'm multiplying the corresponding values, so in this case, I'm getting the 75 by multiplying 100 times 50% plus 50 times 50%. Result, 75. Next one. 275 times 0.2 plus 25 times 0.2, we will get 150. And finally, 75 times 0.3 plus 25 times 0.3, we will end with 50. And then we can calculate the final node. The final node, as you can see, 0.4 probability to 150 and 0.6 probability to 50. So we will get the value of 90 there. So we have received all the expected values for all the various nodes. Now, the worst approach that I actually seen in many situations and many companies, at this point, the person who calculated this decision tree will tell you that the solution of the decision tree is that you have to go for the highest profit, and the highest profit in terms of the expected value is the 100,000. So consequently, all you receive as an information that you should go for the manufacture immediately all 200,000 items, because that has the highest expected value. If you receive as a solution based on the decision tree something like this from your department, or if you try to submit something like this as a result from a decision tree, this is not correct. The decision tree should be analyzed. So how does the decision tree, or how should the decision tree be analyzed? The answer that you have to summarize the various routes, and you have to tell what the outcome is. So indeed, the best expected value is displayed by manufacturing route all 200,000. But in this case, you have 50% chance of making 350,000 and 50% chance of making a loss of 150,000. And that's why I put it down in the questions that suppose Eva is in a precarious financial situation and should not allow any losses. Which route should Eva take? Now, if you don't allow negative values, we have to look at the other alternatives, because the best seeming alternative actually gives us a loss of 150,000. So what's the situation with the other routes? If you are going for 100,000 and waiting, you have a 50% chance of making 100,000 profit and a 50% chance of making 50,000 profit. If you are going for 100,000 and R&D, you have, I'm reading the column on the right-hand side, you have a 20% probability of making $275,000. You have actually 30% of 75,000. And if you add the two items with 25,000, you have a total of 50% chance of making 50,000. So if I summarize it like this, then indeed, as a decision maker, you have a chance to carefully understand and see how this particular situation works out and which route would be the best for you. So the answer, the very important element I would like to underline, that the result of a decision tree is never a single value. It's always a list of various outcomes with key probabilities and items, so the decision maker can properly understand the value of the decision. Okay? So just to summarize in the next slide, I know it's a lot of text, but just look at the second bullet point that in case of 100,000 manufacturing and no R&D, there is 50% chance of making 100,000 and also 50% chance of making only 50,000. The decision tree in this case shows us that the R&D is a better option with that 20% probability of 275,000, 30% of 75,000, and 50% of 25,000 as a result. Once again, on the expected values, we can see that the expected value for the 100 and R&D is 90, while the expected value for the 100 and weight is 75. Okay? So once again, the decision tree analysis means that you have to describe in detail the outcomes of the various pathways. So, okay, this is good. We got an idea what the decision tree is. We understand how it works. I will need probably about 5-6 more minutes. And then I will finish, I will conclude the presentation. So you have an idea, and once again, you can see the various values, and we have seen that it's not enough to just present one single value as an expected value, because the expected value is an average. In order to properly understand the entire decision tree, you need the details of the values and probabilities at the endpoints. So what if I add an additional, I put there an additional information piece? Let's suppose that actually we have we figured out that Boston Dynamics requires this additional 100,000 for a special contract, as it says in the text. This is the suppose that an internal government defense tender committee source can give us a specific decision whether Boston Dynamics will or will not win this tender. If Boston Dynamics wins this tender, they will come to us immediately for the second batch. If they don't win the tender, they will not ask for the second batch. So that means that if this internal source from the government can tell me whether Boston Dynamics will or will not receive the tender, I will know at the time of manufacturing 100,000 whether I should manufacture the additional 100,000 or not. What is the value of information? This guy comes to me and tells me that, okay, look, this is internal information, but you know, if you give me, let's say, $200,000 or $20,000 or $5,000, then I will give you this information. Okay, but should I pay? How much should I pay? There are different, so when I ask it in a class, okay, there are different answers. Some students will say that, well, it doesn't really matter because based on the decision tree, we made up our mind that we are going to manufacture 200,000 anyway. So there is no point actually talking about getting additional information because we will manufacture 200,000 anyway to begin with. That has the highest expected value. Why should I deal with this information? Others will tell me, oh, you know the 200,000, if that means that I have a profit of 350,000. So as far as I'm paying the guy less than 350,000, then I'm good. Then I'm at profit. So maybe we should pay a lot. Can we define it somehow? Can we try to find a formal definition? What the value of information for me as the decision maker at EVA, what is the value of information in this case? The way to do this is quite simply draw another decision tree. This decision tree is based on the information. Okay? So what happens if this guy calls me from the defense agency? I get a call. Okay? Remember that I get this call and I don't know what he or she is going to say. The promise was not to lobby for Boston Dynamics winning this particular tender. This is just an information piece. So the information piece may be yes or no. And once again, we can sort of go back to our initial assumption that it's a coin flip. It's 50-50%. So Boston Dynamics will either get it or it won't get it, right? So 50-50. So in this case, when I get the call, the second batch, i.e. Boston Dynamics gets this particular batch or not, is 50-50%. So there is a 50% chance of getting that Boston Dynamics gets the government tender and therefore asks for the second batch. And there is a 50% chance of Boston Dynamics not getting it and therefore not asking for the second batch. In the case when Boston Dynamics gets the batch, obviously, so the message via phone from the tender committee is that yes, they received it. In that case, I will manufacture immediately 200,000. And this is the main information, that indeed the first decision tree told me to manufacture 200,000. But if I receive the information that there will be no second batch, then I don't manufacture 200,000. Why should I? I shouldn't. I know now that there will be no second batch. Therefore, if the government tender people or the person there tells me that there will be no second batch, the tender will not be won by Boston Dynamics, I only manufacture 100,000, and therefore I'm making a $50,000 profit. This means that the value, so if I multiply 350 by 50%, add 50 times 50%, the value of this is 200. The formal definition that this piece of information, whether Boston Dynamics will or will not have the second batch, the value of the information is the difference between the values of the two decision trees. The first decision tree, this one, gave me 100. Right? This is the 100,000. The second decision tree with the information gave me 200,000. So the actual value of this piece of information, whether Boston Dynamics will or will not need this additional manufacturing, is exactly $100,000. This is a definition. Right? It does not mean that this is how much you should pay on it or pay for it, but this is how you would value that this additional piece of information changes your situation on the long run, in average, by 100,000. It increases your profit on the long run, in average, by 100,000. And based on this, you are in a better negotiating position because at least you know that what would be your the value that you can gain using the information. Okay, so this is the formal definition of the value of information, and with this we completed the second item, second learning objective, to see what the value of information is. Yes?
We received a question
yes.
And a comment which says that, is there a simulation software for this? Because it looks interesting.
I will at the end, I will come back to this. Okay, let me, one single item, it's just 2 minutes. I have the final item here, and then I will answer this question as well. So the final item actually is quite simply relating to the most common question I'm receiving, that, look, this all is beautiful, right? It's very interesting. But how do I decide these probabilities? It's very difficult to make up my mind what probability there is. How do I come up with these numbers? Okay, maybe in some cases I have historical evidence. But what if I come up, for example, for the success of R&D with 0.3, 30%? Or what if the success of R&D is only 20%? Is it going to change things? Yes, it can. It may change things. And that is what we call the sensitivity, effectively, of the tree to these particular probabilities. And you can try this out, right? So once again, I put together an Excel file, and I'm just showing this Excel file to you now. This is in the same format as you saw the items on the PowerPoint. Okay, so you can see here is the manufacturing decision. Here is all 200, only 108, and here is the R&D. So how would, and this is the last question on the page I sent you, so the question is that how does the tree change if the probability of the R&D success is reduced to 20% or increased to 60%? So this probability that is there, and right now it's set to the initial 40%, how do the values change if I start decreasing it to 20%? So I will decrease it now. Okay, look how it's decreasing. And as it's decreasing, the expected value also decreased here. So consequently, you can see how sensitive the tree is. As you can see, if the probability goes to 30%, right? The expected value is still $80,000, so we are still better off doing the R&D and the first 100,000 than not doing the R&D, because the expected value here is 75. But if I decrease it actually to 20%, then the value, the expected value here decreases to 70,000. So it is very sensitive, around, you can calculate the exact value, around between 20 and 30%, because in this case, the R&D rate is so unsuccessful, okay, that in this case it's not worth anymore to do the R&D if I don't want to get loss or don't want to have loss in my entire decision, then I have to go for the 100,000 manufacturing. Let's see the other side. I'm now increasing it to 60%. So out of 10 trials, 6 R&D trials are successful. Okay? And notice that in this case, actually the expected value is higher than the 200,000 manufacturing. So in this case, actually I'm better off not manufacturing the 200,000. So once again, this shows you how you can test the sensitivity, and there is software which will help you in this, drawing very nice diagrams, how sensitive the tree is to the various probability values. And then, as far as I can give a fairly good estimate that the value of the success rate is somewhere between 30 to 50%, then I know that between 30 to 50%, no matter what happens, I will always be in the range that it's better than manufacturing only 100,000, but it's worse than actually, or equal to, than manufacturing the 200,000 in one batch. So then you have a probability range, and rather than giving the specific value that the probability, is 25%, 26%. Why not 27%? Then you can give a range specifically there. So once again, this is the sensitivity of the decision trees, how sensitive they are to a specific probability, and you can explore this either with Excel or with specific software solutions. So my closing slide, and I would say that we have concluded hopefully, and as I have heard, it was already interesting enough that we received some questions, that decision trees are management tools. They are, although they may have numbers, but actually the idea is that they help in creating a structured summary of possible options and outcomes. If you have a brainstorming event when you are talking with your colleagues about possible options, just drawing or envisaging what happens after the decision making will give you a sort of timeline, and then people can brainstorm about this. This is a great way to structure a meeting around. Okay? Even if you don't have the probability specifically, this is a good way of summarizing information. We define that value with information is you take the decision tree with and without the information, and you look at the difference of the expected values between the two decision trees. This way, you get a very nice estimate, a value of information that you can use if you are negotiating for that piece of information. As I have shown in Excel, evaluating the sensitivity of the decision tree can help a lot in decision making, and you don't necessarily need specific values. So you may get away with saying that the probability is somewhere between 20 to 50%, rather than saying that the probability is 25%, which is difficult in real life. In this case, we reviewed the value of perfect information. So the information we received from the government committee was 100% right information. But actually, and it is described in the book if you are interested, we can do the same calculation with imperfect information. So we can consider a situation when the government from the tender committee will receive an information which may be 60% right or 80% right. So they cannot tell us specifically whether Boston Dynamics wins or not, but they can give us an estimate that, let's say, 80% sure that Boston Dynamics will get the contract. So we can talk about the value of imperfect information, although it's more complex. So with this, I hopefully, although it was very, very condensed, and probably lots of information was conveyed during this 50 minutes, but hopefully you've seen an interesting example of using a particular tool for management purposes, for decision making. This tool is decision tree, and once again, the decision tree can be a very helpful solution for organizing information, calculating value of information, and effectively summarizing your decision options. Okay, so now let me answer the questions. One of the questions, and once again we will send these slides to you. So there are a number of different software pieces that you can use to actually test your decisions or see how they are calculated. I put the links there. The first one is an online tool called Silver Decision. It runs on Microsoft Silverlight. You can run this one in your browser. It doesn't really do sensitivity analysis, so it's not perfect, but it's a very quick tool to put together a decision tree. So if you just want to play around, this is a good way of doing it. Okay. The second one is a Microsoft Excel add-in. It's unfortunately not free. You have a one month free trial. It has everything that I described, including sensitivity analysis. So the tree plan is a useful tool that you can try. Once again, 1 month trial is included. There is another solution called eDraw, although this is a generic diagram drawing tool, so it requires a bit of more complex approach. Calculation is limited, also a 1 month trial, not as good as tree plan. If you have any experience or any practice in a commonly used data mining tool, that one requires some level of programming. That's the R. That is the basis for our as you know, we have a Master of Science in Business Analytics program as well, which is a very interesting and very unique offering. And this includes learning the R and how you can do data mining and data analytics with R. R has a number of free modules, and one of them is a decision tree module. I put the link there. You can download it and experiment with it. And finally, again, more expensive, but actually complex data mining and decision support tool is the Palisade decision analysis package. The decision tree part of it is called Precision Tree. Again, a free trial, a short free trial, something like 3 weeks or 1 month is available, but that's actually a software for which you have to pay. Other more complex solutions, if any of you are using Cognos tools, Microsoft tools, performance server, and many other approaches, those generally include decision trees. That is a key analytical approach for decision making. Once again, adding the various pathways, adding the various nodes and the probabilities. Based on these tools calculate the values I have presented in Excel. We will send the Excel file so you can look at my calculations, and obviously in Excel you have a limited opportunity for sensitivity analysis. I've just shown you an example. In a software, you would have a diagram about the sensitivity of the tree to the various probabilities.
Okay,
yeah?
The next question is, how can I learn more about decision trees?
Yes, I mean, my prime recommendation would be that once again I was trying to find a free resource for you that you can use after this short presentation. So if you go to the link that I provided at the bottom of the page or in the PowerPoint presentation, this is a freely available book. It has 5 chapters, and those 5 chapters cover everything what I've discussed here in more detail, in a lot more detail. For example, it covers the imperfect information calculation as well. So you can access this book with the chapters, and it's a very clear, very specific, more practice-oriented than theoretical. It gives you exercises so you can check and learn how to do decision trees. But of course, another opportunity, if you have not been yet to the business school, then you can come to the business school and we will help you with decision trees. Okay, this was the marketing part. Thank you.
The next question. Is EVA a new company or an old company with stocks that they are effort to go the first route? So is EVA a new company or an old company with stocks that they can effort to go the first route?
Once again, the exercise has both approaches. So if EVA has the money to actually go for the first approach, then the decision tree shows that the solution is to go for the first approach for the 100,000. But if EVA is a very recent company and it cannot allow losses, then despite the fact, if this is where the question was focusing, then the company cannot allow really to manufacture the 200,000 to begin with, because it might not have the financial backing to do it at the beginning. And therefore, despite the fact that this opportunity comes up on the decision tree, EVA should go for the option of doing the 100,000 and the R&D as it was shown in the original decision tree.
Okay. We have received 3 questions even before the webinars.
Okay.
So let me ask. One of these questions you have already answered. It was about the R.
Yes.
So it's answered. The other question, could you explain how to calculate value of information in decision-making process in collaboration of business with government?
So it's the same point, that quite simply when the company is collaborating. So if, for example, if there is a tender, let's say that the company may win from the government, or any other collaboration with the government, quite simply the value of information is that you draw the decision tree without the piece of information that you may gain. And then you draw the second decision tree, adding the information piece that now you are getting either from the government or you are getting it from market sources, and the difference between the value of the two decision trees will be the value, or would be the value of information. It may well be that actually there is no difference. So it may well be that, and that is very common because, and I'm not going to go into decision bias and other cognitive approaches here as well, but let me just note that generally we feel more secure ourselves when we actually collect more information. But decision trees actually give you a chance to really consider whether your decision making would really be improved, for example, in terms of profit, with additional information. It may happen that the additional information does not improve your long-term decision-making situation and your long-term average profit.
Okay, and the last question, can the value of information calculated be used in business simulations, computer simulations, and if so, how?
I'm not, that's an interesting question. I'm not really sure what the exact focus is. So certainly, once again, if you are considering, for example, modeling a particular decision situation in a software, or building a model, let's say in Excel or any software piece, then of course the decision tree can be done separately and the results of the decision tree can be plugged into the simulation. So it becomes an input into the simulation, and that's how I would use it, or I have used it several times in the past. That, for example, when I'm putting together a cash flow statement, or for a leasing firm, a 5-year cash flow prediction, then I would plug actually results of decision trees into the calculation, which is done on a 5-year future prediction basis. And this would allow me actually to test the results on a 5-year basis using the decision tree results, and using the sensitivity analysis. I can also see that which are the key decisions or probabilities which impact my cash flow on the 5-year term the strongest, or change my results negatively or positively. Okay, so the answer is yes, you can plug it in. I mean, usually, to some extent, depending on the complexity of the software, this requires some kind of either manual work or programming. For example, if you are doing it in R, or if you are getting the decision tree in R and then plugging the information into an Excel spreadsheet to get the cash flow prediction.
Okay, then just a nice question at the end. That does the professor plan any further webinars in the future? Would be appreciated. And many thank yous.
Okay. So you are welcome. To some extent, this was also an experiment for us, since I am recording short sessions for my classes to give them some information, but we have not really tried such quantitative topic yet in webinars. If this was successful, and it seems that it was successful to some extent, hopefully to a large extent, so if it is successful, then I will be happy to do additional quantitative webinars as well, maybe even focusing on specific, for example, modeling spreadsheets or around a specific topic where you can practice with me and you can try out how to build models during the webinar. So this is something we will discuss further. Thank you very much for your interest, and thank you very much for the kind comments. We are concluding then. So once again, thank you very much, and hope to see you maybe in the alumni reunion. And thank you. Goodbye. Have a nice day, evening, morning, depending on which time zone you are calling in from. Thank you very much.